Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction, conviction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories.
Good morning, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and I am, as always, your host of the Muddy Waters Podcast, your swamp guide, if you will, helping you navigate the murky waters of Maine politics and beyond. Joined today, as always, on Tuesdays. Geez, if I get my words out, it would be great, with Jon Fetherston, journalist extraordinaire of the Maine Wire. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody out there.
That's right. Make sure you wear green. I got to remember that before I leave the house. Don't want to get pinched, right?
There you go. Well, maybe. Well, But
yeah, well,
we'll save that for another episode.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, thanks as always for joining us, Jon, and thanks for all the work that you and the rest of the Maine Wire do to kind of expose what's going on in our state. What, my brain just shut off for a second. My feed seems to be slow. So we were talking off the air about some interesting, I would say, news that dropped, which is an ad by Janet Mills, and I figure, why don't we start there and just watch this ad that exposes half of the problems in the Democrat primary, we'll say. But let's turn that on and see and learn from Janet Mills' perspective about Graham Platner. Oh, did it not go? Hold on. Oh, it is there. Okay. Technology.
Did you know Graham Platner wrote that women worried about rape need to, quote,
not get so up they wind up having sex with someone they don't mean to.
It's disgusting.
Platner wrote to avoid rape, women should, quote,
act like an adult for sake.
Graham Platner, seriously.
We blame the victim.
That's a horrible thing to say.
Disqualifying.
I have not seen this.
He's a bully.
This guy gives off a vibe.
Just no way I could vote for you.
No.
Graham Platner, the closer you look, the worse it gets.
I'm Janet Mills, and I approve this message.
All right.
Wow.
Shots fired.
Wow.
The Democrat primary.
I don't often compliment Janet Mills, but Janet Mills, that is a great ad. And, I've been waiting for this for a long time. Platner has been going, up in the polls. He's been doing, good polling. He holds great town hall events. But I've really wondered, when are his past comments coming back to bite him? And I think they are coming back to bite him. And I say this all the time. I say it all the time on Maine Wire TV. When a candidate tells you who they are, listen to them because they're being honest. And that is who Graham Platner is. You know, the more you look and they pan in on his Nazi tattoo is, you know, the worse it gets. That is a great ad by Janet Mills. And here's the question. Is Shannon Bello is going to call out Graham Platner for this? Is Troy Jackson going to call out Graham Platner for this? Is Pingree going to call out Platner for this? Because they all stand on a stage with him and have been riding his momentum. Even Matt Dunlap has recently been seen in public with Platner. They're gonna have to call him out on this now, or they're condoning this type of behavior. Am I not right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've made the comment. I think I'm trying to figure out when it was. It was relatively recently. I think it does all kind of stem from the Graham Platner stuff. Really, is that one of the things that the Democrats seem to be demonstrating so far is that when they talk about morality, that's for our sake. What they're trying to do is they talk about morality to try to manipulate people with strong morals not to vote for people. So they know for the most part that they're not going to convince, you know, conservatives, traditional values people to vote for the leftists. But if they can get them to stay at home, that's almost just as good. And so a lot of their messaging around morality and whatnot really seems to be trying to, again, convince conservatives to stay home and people not to vote for vote for their candidate because of some potential perceived problem within them, because if they vote for Graham Platner, like all their platitudes about the negatives of any Republican candidate really go out the window, and it proves that they don't actually really care about that, because it's not just, okay, you've got the Nazi tattoo, you've got the comments about women. I wonder if Mills is going to run an ad about his comments about black people and why they don't tip. Because that's another thing that he said publicly, right? And so, you have to wonder if they're just refusing to, to change their vote to somebody else based on this stuff. You have to wonder if they have if they even care about morals. And what's interesting is, I think when Platner did well in the polls, somebody wrote an article, somebody on the left, that basically suggested that the reason that this is okay, it's actually somehow, right? Ready? It's Trump's fault. Right. It's because the Republicans voted for Trump when he was charged with all of these trumped up charges that you actually do your research. You come to the conclusion that there is no demonstrable evidence that Trump did anything wrong legally in these situations where he was on trial in 7 different, all these, this witch hunt that they did against him. But their claim is they've determined, even though we live in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty, your own words are your words. So Graham Platner has said these things. This is not, we don't need to go to trial to know that he said these things, right? Whereas with Trump, the things that he was accused of were not even proved in court, even though there was a conviction laid down. They had to change laws. Anyway, the claim was that it's because of Donald Trump that now anybody, their morals don't matter, and it's his fault.
It's going to be fascinating to me as a reporter, and the Maine Wire has probably been the only outlet who has really, consistently, talked about his past Reddit comments, his tattoo. I've been to, a dozen of his campaign events, and I ask people all the time, what their comments are. But what is his response to this ad going to be today? I mean, he can't discount it. He can't hope it just goes away, because it's not going to go away, because Janet Mills has a lot of money, and she will make sure that this ad runs a lot of times in prime time, during primetime news and during prime time. And it's, it's also going to, if a child sees this ad, go, "Mommy, what is he talking? Or what are those ladies talking about?" And I'm like, how do you, as a mother or a loved one of somebody who unfortunately has been victimized by sexual crimes, how do you vote for this guy when he says something like that? And here's the thing: we all know somebody in our friends or our social networks or our work networks that have unfortunately been victims of domestic violence or sexual violence. This is a game changer. This is a game changer. And I'm also being told by some reliable sources, this is not the only, shoe to drop on Platner. Mills has another big one waiting, in the chamber for this. And, it makes sense. Chuck Schumer, actively recruited her, has put a lot of money into her campaign coffers. And it does call into question his character on this. And like I said, if you're a Democrat running for governor, or you're a Democrat running for a congressional seat, are you now going to want to be standing next to Graham Platner on a platform? And I think this common sense answer is going to be no. So it's going to be fascinating to watch how he responds to this.
Yeah, I think I was joking off the air. I was like, I know what his response will be. Oh wait, no. How do you respond to that? Like, what can you possibly say? I mean, in the past, when some of the other stuff had come out with, because like a lot of these comments, as well as like some of the comments about him, his views on like why black people don't tip and stuff like that had come out in the past, and like via news articles, but not like an ad like this, right? And so his response back then was basically like, as a young man, I had a lot of pain, and my pain, and like I just don't think that sells. Like, especially when you have women on camera, like discussing what he said and like really highlighting it and getting it in front of the vast majority of Mainers through television ads. I just don't think, I don't think that like, oh yeah, I was a young man and I was hurting and I said some things that were inappropriate. Like, I don't know that that will pass.
It would work. It would work for the tattoo, because if he would have said, day 5 of his campaign, hey, I was drunk, I was out with my buddies, I got a tattoo and I shouldn't have done it, the tattoo issue probably would have gone away. He didn't handle it that way. And now he's even come back out and saying that, the tattoo was a reasonable thing. So he's waffled on his apology for the Nazi tattoo. But you can't apologize your way out of something like this. I mean, this is the worst thing that you can do to a woman. So,
yeah.
And, and if that's how he feels. And, it's not often you see Democrats go after Democrats. So
right.
I'm actually pleasantly surprised. My only question has been, like, why did she wait so long? But then, I was on with the Ray Richardson show this morning, and we were talking about it, and maybe it is the right time to do it. He is up in the polls, and this he's going to have to answer to this, and it will have an effect on the polls one way or the other, because most of the public doesn't pay attention to his politics as much as Chuck and John pay attention to politics. Yeah. But this affects everybody that this ad. It will have it will resonate. Yep.
I'll be interested to see there's a more, I would say, anti-Trump Republican in my district that he was basically saying that he knew he was confused because he didn't actually know who the candidates were. But he was like, I think I already got my person for governor. And then I went back a different time and talked to him. And I didn't ask questions at that time because I was like signature gathering to try and get people on the ballot. Right. And like he was willing to sign for Republicans. So I was like, okay. And so anyway, he's like, we end up getting to it when I came back, and he's like, Graham Platner. And I was like, oh, you don't know. And I wasn't like, I didn't have time. I was signature gathering. I was like, I'll come back and we'll have a conversation later on. And I encouraged him to look into some of the Republican gubernatorial candidates and whatnot. But I imagine that he'll look at that and be like, oh yeah, no, I can't, like, you know what I mean? And I think that like most of your older people, there are so many people, but particularly, older people. And like, this is one of the things that we have to remember is like, this is not like some other states and some other areas. Maine is an older state. And yes, among the youth, millennials and younger, I think he could get away on this somehow, but I don't think the older generation, I guess what I'm saying is like, I'm not sure if he could get away with it with the younger generation, but I definitely don't think he could get away with it with the older generation. They're just not going to have it.
No, I mean, it's definitely going to sway the polls. It's it's also going to sway households. Like, what do you mean, honey? You want to go to a Graham Platner event now? Like, before it might have been cool because he was going up in the polls and he's fighting for us and he's, he's the manly man with the deep voice, and he says he's going to go to Washington and fight for us. Okay, well, maybe you could convince your spouse or your friend to go to a rally with you now, but can you convince somebody now that was on the fence to say, hey, let's go to a Graham Platner event? No, I can't support what his message is. No. So, like I keep on coming back to it. Shannon Bello needs to call him out on this. Hannah Pingree needs to call him out on this. Troy Jackson needs to call him out on this. If you're a gubernatorial candidate, you can't stand on a stage anymore with him, especially women. Like women, do they want to be seen in public with this guy right now? He's toxic. And what's frustrating to me is that he was toxic day one. It's taken this long to have it come out. I also wonder if there's somebody, does Bernie Sanders come and put an arm on his shoulder and say, hey, Graham, it was a good ride, but there's no getting back from this, this is a horrible optic for you. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it should happen. Yeah. But, this is going to be a game changer. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because if he doesn't back out, right? And this is kind of almost like a best case scenario for Republicans, right? To have them trying to bloody each other and basically making our cases for us before we get to the general. And then, Susan Collins' team is going to have, a stuff prepared no matter who the candidate is that comes out, that they'll be able to, make sure people understand who their opponent is and what the faults and failures they have. But you have to imagine two things. One, one is a question actually, but you have to imagine that, if Platner stays in, he's going to have to go after Mills now. He's going to have to start calling her out on some things, which, geez, if he does that, what's he going to call her out on? Her record? Well, that's not going to help Democrats in the general the gubernatorial election, right? Because if you attack Janet Mills on any aspect, they're all basically running on her agenda. They've all the Democrat gubernatorial candidates have been part of the machine that has been except for Angus King III, they've been part of Janet Mills. So if you attack Janet Mills, you're attacking all of the gubernatorial candidates, except for, again, Angus King III, who I don't know what he's doing, but he learned politics at the feet of his father. Anyway, that's all I know about him. But I don't know how that helps them, but I hope it happens. But then, the question you have to ask is do they not do research? Who this I don't want to get conspiratorial, but you have to ask the question, did the people who decided that they were going to spend millions and millions of dollars propping Graham Platner up not do the research? And how did they not find all this stuff? And if they did, why did they run him?
Well, let's face it. Bernie Sanders recruited Graham Platner for this, and it was an audition. It wasn't a job interview. It was an audition. Graham Platner, and I compliment on it. He is a great stage actor. He is a great stage actor.
Absolutely.
Here is your script. Go out and deliver it, and he does it better than 99% of political candidates that I've ever seen. He delivers a great script, a performance. There is nothing more than that. But the Bernie Sanders group and, the AOC group, they said, this is what we need. We need, a new fresh face with a deep, masculine voice to go out there and be the pit bull for the party, thinking that this other stuff will just, fade away. It'll fade away. And up until this point, it has faded away. It's like I said, I don't often compliment Janet Mills, but good job, Janet Mills, bringing this back out. I mean, because, and to your point, and which is a great point, if Platner now goes and attacks Mills, it's an attack on the Democratic Party. It's not an attack on Mills. It's an attack on the Democratic Party overall in Maine. That should writ with fraud, and hopefully we'll talk about it. President Trump just yesterday signed an executive order to make the Commission on Fraud official. You don't think they're coming to Maine? They're definitely coming to Maine. They're, Dr. Oz, J.D. Vance, They're coming to Maine. They're going to look at stuff. They're going to look at stuff the Maine Wire has uncovered already. We know where all the fraud is, and trust me, they do too. They know where it is, and the only thing that I worry about is are they going to get here before the November election, and are people going to be held accountable before November? Because if they're not, elections have consequences, and if a Democrat gets elected governor, do you think they're going to do a fraud investigation? Hell no. No, they're just going to keep the gravy train running, and the nonprofits that help them win election are going to ask for a favor and be protected. That's why this election is so important. You have to change leadership in Augusta to the Republican Party if you want fraud to stop. And I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, socialist, Democrat, socialist, independent. Nobody likes fraud. Nobody likes fraud because fraud takes away from the programs that, the Democrats say that they want, the humanitarian programs, the socialist Democrat programs that they want. I spent 2 days last week on Maine Wire TV just in Portland alone. And, it's so troubling, Chuck, to sit there on the corner of Forest Avenue and Preble Street and just look at all the despair that came out because the weather was a little bit nicer. You have the homeless people. I saw open air drug dealing. I saw a guy, I literally had to move because the guy was defecating on the sidewalk, close to me. I saw public urination. I saw people in bus stops, being moved along by, the Portland police doing a great job of moving people along and stuff like that. These are Democrat policies that have led to this human despair in Portland. I see it in Lewiston. You see it in Bangor. So all the Democrats have right now is keeping these NPOs content and keeping them out of trouble, because anybody can drive down Preble Street in Portland or drive down Bartlett Street in Lewiston and tell me that these plans are working. They're not working. They're not working. Yeah. So what are the Democrats going to rest their, laurels on during this campaign election? What is Shannon Bello's? Well, I want to keep ICE out of the polling places on election day. Well, why? If illegals don't vote, then why would you care if ICE was going to be there, Shannon Bellows? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Are you admitting that illegals vote because you don't want ICE at the polls? Like, which one is it? It can't be both. It has to be one or the other. Either illegals don't vote or illegals are voting, and that's why you don't want ICE at the polls. Like the hypocrisy right there. It's just unbelievable.
Well, and I think it's also like pretty unlikely that ICE would go to the polls, right? So it's like
100%.
Right. It's like, seriously, is this what we're saying? That like it's all just part of their same propaganda that they're trying to spread, that like why we want voter ID is to scare people who are legally allowed to vote away from voting. It's voter intimidation. Nonsense. We just want legal votes to count. That's it.
100%. 100%. It's very simple, very easy. But if you're a Democrat, right? I mean, right now, what are you hanging your hat on right now? If you're a Democrat running for governor in Maine right now, I mean, what's your campaign position other than, Trump is bad and, Trump is to blame for everything and, everything is bad. But I mean, what are you hanging your hat on? I mean, it's easy for Republicans. They can come in and say, hey, I'm going to clean up the fraud. I'm going to clean up, I'm going to cut taxes. I'm going to cut the budget. That's easy for Republicans. And some Republicans are, it was actually refreshing to hear Jonathan Bush this past week at a debate in Dunegrass in Old Orchard Beach. Like, what are these Republicans talking about? Like, you're talking about adding programs. If I'm going to be governor, I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut programs, because that's what Republicans are supposed to do. So it was kind of refreshing to hear, him say that at the Dunegrass debate. Yeah.
Who was talking about adding programs?
Most of the other Republican candidates were that night. Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't had a chance to watch the whole debate. I watched the first 50 minutes. Unfortunately, I had a meeting that night. I need to go back and look. I didn't realize that. But Yeah, I mean,
I thought it was a point that, Jonathan Bush really differentiated himself from the crowd a little bit by saying something like that. I actually went up to him after the debate and we talked about it. I was like, how refreshing is that to hear, that somebody's actually going to cut programming, not add programming. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
Kudos to him for that.
We need common sense programming, and it's interesting, as obviously is clear by that not all Republicans are completely against all forms of government programs, right? I think the primary issue that we want to address first is getting rid of the fraud, number one. But then I think, as I like to comment, the Republican Party is the party of empowerment. We don't want the government to get in the way of people being able to advance and grow in their life, right? And that's one of the problems. We have to look at programs and say, yes, this provides food or this provides whatever service to help somebody who's in need. But the big question is, does it keep them there? Does this program actually get in the way of them being able to do what they need to do to get into a better place in life? And if it does, then we need to cut it, right? That not just from a cutting taxes standpoint, but also from a humanitarian standpoint. We care about people. We want them to be in the best condition possible. And guess what? That's not living off of the government's teat.
Well, unfortunately, now we have documentable proof. You have generations of families being on welfare. And, Democrats will often say, oh, the Republicans are capitalist and they're bad. It's been proven over time that a strong economy benefits everyone. Yeah. Capitalism does take people out of poverty. And, Governor LePage was, he was at a Republican dinner a couple of weeks ago in Auburn. And he was saying, that the fact that you punish people for making more money when they're on welfare is just ridiculous. And I was like, wow, this is a very good point. Governor LePage, who's now running for Congress, stagger it. Okay, so you're receiving benefits, and then if you get a job and make more money, we're not going to take away all of your welfare. We're just going to cut it back a little bit, and stage it and encourage people to be successful and make more money. And this is coming from a Republican, an evil Republican. Oh, Governor LePage, he says things that but it's common sense to anybody going, yeah, you don't take away 100% of their welfare benefits because they made up $50 more than what the maximum was. You just cut it back, and you encourage people and you show people that the ways to make more money and not lose benefits. And this is coming from Republicans. You don't hear and you just look at, you have generations of people on welfare, and my opinion, Jon Fetherston's opinion, the Democrats want to put you on welfare and keep you on welfare because they want to control you. But the Republicans want to reward you for your success and encourage your success because it makes it better for everyone. Why would you not want, if you're able to, physically able to get out of the house, get out of the house, be productive, even volunteer, make contributions to society rather than just sitting at home all day. Why wouldn't you? That makes a better America for everybody, not just the working class people. And there is so much fraud right now in the system, nationally. I don't know if you saw, Nick Shirley just dropped another one of his videos about California fraud. You've got Minnesota, you've got California, you've got Ohio, you've got Maine. Okay, that's just 4 states out of 50 where you have billions, with a B, billions of dollars of fraud. What could those billions of dollars do that's already been spent? It's already been appropriated. What could those billions of dollars do for the homeless problem that you have, the gun violence that you have in Maine, the open air drug dealing problem you have in Maine? I mean, all of those things could, those resources could be putting things back and getting people back on track, for a productive life. And it's heart wrenching to me when I drive through Portland or I drive through Bangor or Lewiston and I see all this despair. And then, but the Democrats still will tell you that the Republicans are bad people, but these are all Democrat programs that caused all this. So how are Republicans bad people then? So.
Yeah, well, because it's so funny. I've talked about kind of addressing the concerns in the Republican Party by saying that, like, the Democrat Party, largely Republicans are celebrating the death of the Democrat Party, right? Because the Democrat Party, they've got the lowest approval rating that, you know, in history, or pretty close to it. At somewhere, it was below 30%, but now it's between like 30 and 35%. And, you know, Republicans need to like chill out just a little bit, because we're like 35 to 40%. We're not very beloved either. And so, like, but it's right now, both parties, the way that they seem to be approaching things is, we're not the other guy. And so the plan is, how do we make the other guy look as bad as possible? But especially for the Democrats, because they've got a worse approval rating, right? And so they don't have anything other than they have to try and make you think that the other guy is the boogeyman, and that they're going to take away your freedoms, while the Democrats, consistently take away their freedom. One of the statistics that the Common Sense for Maine people at the debate, and then also Ray is mentioned on the show yesterday on the WLOB, the Ray Richardson show, is that Maine ranks 40, I think it was 43rd or something like that. It was in the 40s in freedom. That's
I can believe
Democrat
that. I can
rule.
believe.
We are one of the least free states in the union. This was obviously on display. You know, I think probably during late 2020 or 2020 into 2021, 2022, we were probably closer to 49 or 50. I guess we might have been a little bit more free than California and Hawaii, but there weren't many places, like we were probably closer to 50 anyway during the COVID years. But I remember during 2020, in like December, I went to visit my brother in San Antonio, and went to a 49ers Cowboys game in Dallas. Went to SeaWorld, went to the movies twice, at a time where, like, you couldn't do anything still here in Maine, just about. And, you know, it was like being in a different universe. It was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh my gosh, freedom does still exist. And that's frightening, right? Like, we live in a state where, you know, where we are one of the least free states in the union. That is scary. On top of everything else, obviously, there's the economic challenges. There's the woke agenda. There's, you know, there's the fraud, and then there's the fact that we are one of the least free states in the United States of America.
Oh, it's a fabulous point, Chuck. And here's the other thing that doesn't get a lot of play. There are two Democrat parties right now. There's your grandparents' Democrat Party, and then there's this new age, which is the Graham Platner thing, your Democrat Socialist Party. And when the mayor of the biggest city in Maine comes out and says, you know, Mark Dion, who I always assumed was a moderate Democrat, says,
I think he is.
You have to come out. Well, I don't know that. I don't know that I agree with you on that, because now
Maybe
he
not.
said just last week that people need to start being embracing the Democrat socialist agenda. And I drive through Portland and go, the Democrat socialist agenda is ruining one of the best cities on the East Coast, you know, that needs tourism to survive. You know, like, if you own a cruise ship, are you going to pull into Portland so you can see all the, you know, the drug dealing going on, or the human defecation in Monument Square, where the small coffee shop owner or a local bookstore or restaurant owner has to every day clean up human feces outside of his front door just to open up his doors for business? It has a residual effect. It might not be this season. It might not be next season. You know, and then they also want to raise the tariff fees. You know, it's interesting. They want to raise the tariff fees on the cruise ships coming in so they can do, you know, more green energy projects in Portland. I mean, eventually, if you own a cruise ship, you might say, well, you know, let's just go to Boston. We don't need to stop in Portland this trip, or something like that, you know, because, I mean, you know, these things have consequences. And I was shocked by Mayor Dion saying that, you know, hey, let's support the Democrat socialist agenda. But Hey, Mayor, you know, I'll drive you around the city and I'll show you what I see, you know, but
it seemed like, maybe I misunderstood what he was saying, but it seemed to me that he was suggesting that the Democrat Party needs to basically embrace them as being a part of the Democrat Party, I think, in order to have kind of like the broad coalition. And again, you probably paid more attention to exactly what he said, but I heard it in the line of broad coalition. Now, I also am like, no, you need to. The Democrat Socialists are a cancer of the Democrat Party, and if you don't root out that cancer, the Democrat Party will die. And will be replaced by something else. That's just a fact. Like, I do not believe, that America is served by a party who is socialist. It is not good for America. It is not good for the Democrat Party. And I think that it needs to be rooted out. But I heard him as saying we need to embrace them because we need to beat the Republicans, which does suggest that he's a bit less moderate than he suggested. Either way, even if he's not saying, even if I was wrong, and he actually, even if I was right and he actually is looking at this from we need to embrace it in order to be able to win. Even if that's true, it's still less moderate than he presented, and I was kind of surprised. I know that he's a politician, right? Like, that's one thing. If you
Sure.
pay attention to what he does, he's a politician, and he's in a lot of ways he's trying to find effective means of appealing, or some people would say pandering, but appealing to everyone in some form or fashion. Whoever he's talking to, that's who he's trying to appeal to. I was at a meeting where he talked to a group of people in Portland who tend to be a little bit more conservative. It wasn't the Republicans, although he did also meet with them, but it was with this other group that was kind of middle of the road. And he seemed to be, suggesting that he wanted to do more things in line with conservatives, but that, he had to maintain, there's only so much he could do, essentially. And
Right.
he's got to be smart about, when he can, what he's able to accomplish and what he's not able to accomplish. And so sometimes he's going to do things. So anyway, I think that he just is a politician, and he's playing games.
I personally think he's a great guy. Personally, if I'm going to be laying all my
him.
cards on the table, I like him.
I
too,
like
yeah.
him. But,
I like him. Yeah.
But I don't like that statement, and I almost want to bring him on the podcast again, because I had him on about a year ago. And I almost want to bring him back on and be like, Mark, what are you doing, buddy?
Well, but it goes back to the classic line. I'm a big fan of Reagan, Chuck. If you agree with somebody 80% of the time, they're your friend. They're not your enemy. Yeah. And I probably agree with, the mayor of Portland 80% of the time. The 20% is probably pretty non-negotiable for me and stuff like that.
Right.
But and that's where you need politicians to stop anymore. Because you can work with somebody that agrees with you 80% of the time. I don't think my wife agrees with me 80% of the time, yet I still continue to stay married. And it feels like my numbers are like 20% of the time, and like some days, but we can still love each other and still live in the same household and raise a nice family together and stuff like that. But it's a great quote. When somebody agrees with you 80% of the time, they're your friend. They're not your enemy. And we need to get back to that more in politics, Republican, Democrat, Democrat, Socialist, Independent, doesn't matter. Like, you can't tell me that things are going well in Maine right now. That doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. It doesn't mean that there isn't a brighter future, because there is going to be a brighter future. But that's where leadership is so crucial in this next election. Who's going to be the best leader for Maine? Who's going to be the best leader on your city council? Who's going to be the best leader on your local board of selectmen? And most importantly, who's going to be your leader on your local school committee to say, let's get this kiddie porn out of our, libraries. Let's get this, agenda out of our gender-changing agenda out of our, daily curriculum. And let's go back to the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, come on. Like, what are we doing there? Because, if we don't, it's just going to go down a worse path. The most important job in politics right now is being on a local school committee and, having, fighting to say, no, let's get these books out of the library. Let's look at this agenda. Like, why are we talking more about sexual topics? Why are we talking more about gender topics? Can little Joey read? Can little Joey do, basic math? And a lot of times, because I'm a reporter, I have to. It's my job. I listen to school committee meetings. We don't talk about education anymore. We talk about feelings. We talk about, pride flags. We talk about, First Amendment rights, and is it all right for people to go to school committee meetings and speak up? And I think it is okay, but I would really like to go to a school committee meeting and say, hey, this is what we're going to do to fix our problems with third grade math. This is what we're going to do, with fixing the English classes in fifth grade. This is what we're going to do to go make sure that our graduating class can read and can write, because now you're passing people along in the public school system that can't read and write.
Yeah.
Like, why? How is that helping anybody? And if you don't think that has down the road effects on everybody in this country, it does. You have people in college now paying, college tuition, ringing up student loan debt that don't know how to read and write. How is that possible in America?
It's a great question. It's absolutely wild and insane to me. And this is the thing is, like, I don't know how many Democrats actually watch this show, right? But like, if you're a Democrat out there, or if you have friends who are Democrats, this is the line of reasoning for that I would use with them at this point. We have to elect a Republican because there's no other option. You got Republicans, you got Democrats, right? This is the reality. This is our system. And you, Democrats, that there is a problem within your party. Your party is not going to change, and they're not going to reform if you keep voting for them. The only way that you can make them realize that they need to change is by voting for Republicans until they get it. And there are problems, obviously, within the Republican Party, but nothing compared to what's going on in the Democrat Party. Are you crazy? Like, the issues that are 80-20 issues that the majority of Democrats agree with Republicans on, the Democrat Party, the elites that run it, are against us on those things. They're against the people. They don't care about the people. They care about maintaining control. And right now, their voting base has told them, even if we don't agree with you, we will keep voting for you no matter what. And so now they're going to do whatever they want, and it's not going to be good for the people. So we need Republicans to get elected. We have to win here in the state of Maine, because without that, there really is no hope for turning things around here in Maine. That's the bottom line. You cannot tax your way out, into prosperity. It does not work. Socialism, we know it does not work. Period. Full stop. Or exclamation point, if I can get it up. But anyway, so
but you know
there's
what,
my
Chuck,
2 cents on that, John.
Republicans are a lot to blame. It's easy to say, oh, well, Democrat policy stinks.
Yeah.
The Democrat policies stink, and taxing stinks, and it's very easy to say it, but Republicans who don't vote elect Democrats. That's a classic saying. And Republicans who don't vote because I don't like Trump, or I don't like, this person, or Susan Collins is too much of a moderate for me, so I'm not going to go out and vote. Okay, well, you just elected a Democrat then. And that's the reason why we're in the position that we're in. Okay, if you don't like a certain candidate, that still doesn't mean that you don't go out and vote, because there are other things on that ballot. 99.9% of the time, there are other candidates. There's other issues on the ballot. And just because you don't like one candidate on the ballot, you're not going to go out and vote, and you think you're sending a message to somebody? No, you're electing a Democrat is what you're doing. And the Democrats do a lot well. You have to respect your enemy. The Democrats run good campaigns. The Democrats get people to go out and vote. They go out and knock on doors. They go out and get nonprofits to, carry their water for them, and which leads to fraud in your state. But they do a good job of, laying the foundation, picking the candidate, recruiting the candidates, and stuff like that. When you on the Republican side,
except in the case of
go ahead.
Except in the case of Graham Platner. So I was just going to say, but go ahead. They didn't do a good job there. But anyway, go ahead.
They didn't do a good job, but he's beating Mills by 15% in the polls right now, though. I agree with you.
That's true.
The facts are, I don't support him, and I would never vote for him. But the facts are, he is a good candidate right now. Up until this Mills
Right.
ad, it was well played. It was well orchestrated. And it wasn't dumb luck that they picked Graham Platner. This was a plan that they had years ago to get to this point.
Yeah.
Now, nobody will enjoy it blowing up in their face more than I will. But as of right now, as of today, it has worked. And that's what they do. And how many times, Chuck, you and I go to a lot of, Republican events and a lot of, dinners and stuff, and people, I'm not going to go out and vote. I'm going to send a message to people. No, you're not sending a message. The only message that you're sending is that you're electing a Democrat when you do that. And people have to get out and vote this election cycle. They just have to. They have to. They have to vote for
and get your friends out to vote.
And that is the most, not a friend. You have to get 5 friends of yours to go out and vote. 5 family members, 5 friends, 5 coworkers. You have to go out and vote. I mean, go out and vote, people. Get out of work. Take a mental health break and go out and vote. And because if you don't, your mental health is going to be even more drastically affected. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, I just as an example, I met somebody at a door doing something else that I do. So I wasn't there for politics, but this guy just volunteered that he loves Trump and he wants deportations and stuff like that. And then I went back later because we needed signatures to get somebody on a ballot, and he signed. And turns out, despite the fact that this guy has lived in the same place for like 13 years, he said, he is not registered to vote. So somebody who's a strong conservative, very, very much loves Donald Trump, supports Donald Trump, et cetera, but like didn't even get out to vote, even in 2024, right? Such a strong supporter and didn't even get out to vote in 2024. To the point where this is not registered to vote. He's not been registered to vote where at his current address for 13 years.
It takes 5
I think
minutes out of your life to get registered to vote for this guy. Go to your local town hall, go to, talk to the clerk, get registered to vote. I mean, how can that be? Like, how can it be? I'm a nerd.
It's crazy.
I'm
like somebody who was like
self-described nerd, but voting is your most important right in this country, and if you don't vote, you don't get to complain. I've always said that. So.
Well, and somebody with whom you like a complete stranger that he didn't even know the political leanings of that complete stranger, he starts talking about politics and yet not registered to vote, right? Like, so crazy, right? And I think I don't think voter registration is the same issue in Maine than it was in Pennsylvania, but I do think that there's a lot of opportunity to get some of these like Republicans, people who would be Republicans, registered to vote. And we need to, you're right. The Republican Party has to do better. We have to match the machine. We at least to a degree. We don't necessarily, I don't know that we're going to get all the way up to how aggressive they are, but we need to do better at getting people out to vote, getting people registered to vote, coordinating and working together within our local towns and committees. So that's one thing you can do at home. Get involved in your local committee, or start or just get involved with your local friends in your neighborhood and have conversations. I know that they're difficult, especially in Cumberland County. They're uncomfortable. There are a lot of people who are crazy, rabid, left leaning. But if we don't have these conversations, then if we stop this and we continue to not do this, really, then we ensure that our republic has no hope of continuing into the future. Like, we have to do this. It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. But one of the biggest lies that we believe that really has led to this is don't talk about religion and politics in polite conversation. And it's like, that is nonsense. These are the 2 most important things. We need to be willing and comfortable and able to politely and appropriately have conversations with people we disagree with. And that actually is largely what America was founded on: freedom of speech, freedom, the ability to worship, the ability to do whatever. Civil discourse is what this country was founded on, and it's what Charlie Kirk himself worked toward for so many years until he was sadly taken from us. But it's what we need in order to restore the republic. So anyway, that's all I got for today.
Hey, can I do a shameless plug for next Tuesday?
Sure.
The 24th.
Sure.
There is a big gubernatorial debate being held in Bangor, sponsored by the Maine Wire. The debate will be hosted and moderated by the great Steve Robinson. He will be moderating the debate. All 8 Republican gubernatorial candidates have agreed to participate. We are going to do a pregame and a postgame show live on Maine Wire TV, where you can follow us, Maine Wire on YouTube, on our Facebook page, or our X account. We're going to go live at 6 o'clock and do a pregame show. Then Steve will moderate the debate at 7. And then we'll do a wrap-up spin room, as we're going to call it. And that'll be, like I said, broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, X account, all on the Maine Wire accounts. It's going to be a one-of-a-kind of event. It's not going to be your typical, gubernatorial debate. Steve's got some surprises planned. We've got some surprises planned for the pre and post game report. If you can't get to Bangor, because I know it's not an easy place to get to for somebody, there are still limited tickets available. But between all of our social media platforms and YouTube, it's something that you definitely will want to take a look at, because it'll be an exciting evening. Some debates can be dry and long. This one will be fun. We're really working hard to make this a unique event and make it the campaign event of 2026.
All right. Well, I lament. I'm really excited about where I'm going next week, but I lament that I will be unable to be there in person. I will make sure to watch, but I will be visiting my brother out of state, and so I will not be around myself. But if you're able to be around, you should be there. If not, watch it online. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, John, as always, and thank you all for watching. We'll be back here again. We'll see. Maybe next Tuesday morning.